All right, so I just got a question about how I view veganism being mostly about suffering. And I'm going to explain why I think that's the most important part. And so to me, the idea of if something can suffer, we shouldn't intentionally make it suffer. I think that's a morally wrong act to do. And within the question, it was talking about if we should outweigh pleasure. And yeah, I think that's worth factoring in. So if somebody has chickens running around versus chickens in a tiny little cage, even if the outcome's going to be the same for them and they're bad, still that bit of pleasure probably tips the scale a little bit. I don't think it justifies actions of killing or other actions of harm just because there was some pleasure added. But I think I don't know what pleasure for a chicken or a cow is like. I don't know if at the end of its life it can think back to the pleasureful moments. But what I would say is that if it can suffer, then any amount it isn't suffering is best. Now, I've had extremes asked to me about if I could just wipe out all animals, then none of them would ever suffer. Would I do it? And no. And same with humans. I suffer sometimes, but I want to live, so I assume other things want to live. So I have no interest in removing them to remove their suffering. But if an action's going to happen, if something is legal, if it is legal to kill animals, then when we take our approach for why we want to be against it and why we want to change it, I think it's important to look at which parts are worse than others. Because things change slowly over time, so we can change different parts of it. For example, it's horrible to kill animals just for their fur, and we currently do that, but it's very hated. Lots of people, non-vegans, hate it, and I'm guessing before too long it will be illegal. It will be illegal before eating meat's illegal. And so it's not just as simple as don't eat, drink from, or kill animals. And it all has to happen at once. I mean, it'd be nice if it happened at once, but it's not going to. So we want to figure out where the majority of the suffering's happening and where the majority of the change can be and work on that. And so if an animal is going to die and it could suffer before it dies or not suffer before it dies, I would rather it not suffer before it dies. For example, a deer that lived 2 years in a forest getting shot versus a cow that lived 2 years in a crowded area that maybe goes through some rough treatment and has a miserable life getting shot. I would, as everything else being equal, I would rather that deer get shot than the cow get shot. And it would be the same with humans too. It would, if a human's running around in the forest having a great life and getting shot, comparably to 2 years for these animals, it'd probably be imagined like a 15-year-old human. I don't know. But running around in a forest, having a great life, or at least a free life, and getting shot versus a human being in slavery and tied up to an area and forced to work and do this horrible stuff, and then at 15 getting shot. I would rather the human in the forest get shot than the slave gets shot. Oh, if I had to pick one of those two things to happen, if I could make the other thing disappear. So obviously it wouldn't be as simple as they're both happening. You wouldn't have the person in the forest get shot and then there's a slave here suffering. The point here would be saying that this one removes the person. If a person needed to die, one person needed to die, would I rather them be bred into this existence of slavery or naturally bred into nature and then taken out? And that's why I think it's better to hunt than it is to eat animals from factory farms. Now, obviously, the counter to this would be the people that want to eat meat would point out that you couldn't. Well, not just them. Vegans would also point out that for the amount of meat people want to eat, you couldn't just hunt. There's not enough animals to hunt for what they're wanting, so you couldn't just switch over to only hunting instead of factory farming. Now you could. People could just cut down on the amount of meat they eat or cut it out completely. But I just wanted to use that as an example of any amount of pleasure is good. Any amount of suffering is bad. And the more suffering there is, the worse it is. And so that's why I view it that way. Now, I don't know exactly how to view an animal's want to live. Now, I know an animal doesn't want to be hurt, but the fact that I could think about my future and decide I want to live, I have this desire to live. Now, part of that might be a natural instinct, and animals might have that exact instinct. They just don't think about it in the same way. I don't think at this point I look at animals the same, in the sense of, if somebody went behind a human and just shot them in the head, they didn't know they died. They just died instantly, and they were they're not suffering. I would feel that person was robbed of something they want. And I think it's reasonable to think, to some extent, the same thing would be for a non-human animal. But I'm not convinced that it's fully that. Now, don't get me wrong. I hope this doesn't sound unvegan of me. I think it's important to analyze these types of things. And I don't think we should kill animals if we don't need to. Kill animals in self-defense, kill humans in self-defense. I don't think we need to eat animals, but if somebody thought we needed to eat animals and we couldn't make a law to stop them, then I'd prefer it be something like hunting, something like a need to put it out of its misery as quick as possible. And I'm not fully convinced that this thing that's existing in the world that I know can feel pain, and therefore I don't think it should, that I'm convinced that it needs to live or ever be born. For example, if we humans get our societies to go fully vegan, and we make it to where animals aren't even near us, and the only time we experience animals are that we go out into nature and we're in the wild and we're making documentaries and observing them, and then we notice that one animal is just like taking over. This weird, unique things happening where lions start breeding like crazy, and they start killing off all these species. I don't know if at some point we'd say, "Oh man, maybe we should take some of those out." Versus them taking out these species. Now, I don't necessarily have a stance on if a species needs to exist or not, but with humans, I do not think we should do this. I do not think we should kill a human based on my knowledge of how the human brain works. But if we can witness something happening in nature that we could think of as horribly appalling, I don't think that they view their future in the same way. Yikes. Okay. So this is probably sounding horrible. And it's mostly, I want to think about these things, and I want other people to think about these things, and I want to be challenged on these things. So part of me is thinking, oh, I should cut this part out, because it sounds crazy. It sounds very non-vegan, and that's not what I want it to be. And it definitely has gone way beyond answering Lazlo's question. I just kept branching off into different areas. So anyways, that's kind of how I view veganism. I don't want animals to die, but if they have to die, I definitely don't want them to suffer before they die. And I don't think we live in a world where we can just instantly say that we can make it to where no animal will suffer at the hands of humans. So since they can suffer, I guess it's just hard to view it as the death alone being the end of the world, where I do view the death of a human as the end of a world, or at least that human's world. So anyways, if any of that made sense, but you think different thoughts, please share your ideas with me, and please don't unsubscribe because I sounded maybe a little crazy towards the end there. All right, take care, guys.